I can envision the familiar memory of my grandma very clearly. As Dad and I walk up the stairs into the kitchen, we can hear her rise from her chair and in the living room. I imagine she was probably enjoying one of her favorite games, those being Mahjong or Solitaire. As I see her come around the corner, I see her aged, wrinkly, but somehow youthful face stretch into a wide smile as she sees us standing and waiting for her. Her cool house has already done us a good welcome, the cool air relieving us from the hot summer air outside. Around her, I can see the familiar pots boiling on the stove and the small round dining table prepared and arranged for 2 guests and herself. Food would be more or less used to entice us to stay longer, and I will be honest, I don't mind one bit. The delicious smell of authentic homemade chicken paprikash fills my nostrils, further adding to the good mood her house projects onto me. As she walks toward me, I can hear the old wooden floor bending and creaking beneath her feet. She says, "Oh, Jimmy, how nice of you to come by." This is the name she's always called my dad, and I sometimes do too, just to tease him. Memories like this make me thankful for the relationship I had with my grandma. To this day, I carry with me the many lessons that she taught me, and I will for the rest of my life. Grandma was one of the most compassionate and loving people I ever knew. She, along with the rest of Dad's side of the family, show the rich Hungarian tradition throughout all of us, but it is most affluent through her. She had a very youthful wit about her despite her very old age of 87. Her warm smile always glowed when she got to see me and my dad. She wore almost comically large lenses, but they didn't always get the job done. I can remember her saying, "Evan, honey, what does that say?" Of course, I would read out what she said only to hear from her, "Oh, I knew that already." Her endless wit never ceased and never grew old. It only added to her warm nature. Grandma also fit the role of the family matriarch very well. She had an astounding 9 children, and they all think very dearly of her. 7 of these children were girls, and have all grown into the aunts that I know today. All of them seem to have different traits of Grandma within them. Nancy with her wit, Jean with her compassion. The list goes on. Grandma also had a large amount of respect from people not within the immediate family. At any large gathering, everyone knew when she would be arriving. Her old Ford Windstar van almost took on the appearance of a limousine whenever she arrived at any of these gatherings. Once she had settled down to the event, she made her way around greeting and conversing with every single person there, regardless of who they are. I remember seeing her almost come down a line of sorts one by one until she would reach me. We would usually end up getting lost in conversation for what felt like hours. After that, she kept making her rounds. One of Dad's favorite memories of Grandma is one that I can't remember. Dad said, "I will never forget the first time I had her hold you. Her face was probably the happiest I had ever seen it. I'll never forget that." Grandma and I were very close compared to my other fellow grandchildren and cousins. Perhaps that bond goes back farther than I ever realized. Grandma was also one of the wisest people I ever knew. She taught me many lessons that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Grandma, along with the rest of my family, are very open Christians and Catholics. She attended a church of the latter option, and I journeyed with her to Mass for a few times. It was very different than my sort of Sunday school that I would usually go to. Though I was young, she tried to incorporate many of the old and traditional things of Catholicism to me, even giving me my own rosary. I still have it, but I'm just now truly beginning to understand what it means. Her teachings about Christ and what it means to be his follower are still very profound to me. One of the things she would preach to me would be how to treat others with respect and give yourself the same. Her virtues were what she lived by. Her deep involvement in the church is what inspires me to keep going and immerse myself into it. Grandma also taught me discipline, but I learned it through my father. He explained to me that how he would be hit with a belt if he disobeyed or did some sort of otherwise misconduct. Perhaps this would be frowned upon these days, but it taught me the old school ways of learning discipline and obedience very well, maybe even better than my own parents did at times. I have many memories of Grandma too. Most of them take place within her house. Towards the year of her death, she left the house less and less. I believe this was because of her husband and my grandpa passing away the year before. Grandpa was a World War II vet who lived with the after effects of a stroke. Though he was much less youthful and coherent than Grandma, their love for each other never seemed to fade, even after he died. The favorite memory I have of Grandma was on the 55th anniversary of their wedding. Grandma was the happiest I'd ever seen her. The whole family threw a huge celebration for them. During a part of the celebration, Grandma talked about her love for Grandpa. Her eyes filled with tears, and at that moment I realized they loved each other more than any other relationship I'd ever seen. The vision of seeing them hugging and lounging together with all their children posing for a photo will always be engraved in my mind. Despite all the memories I have with Grandma, none of them were more profound to me than the night she died. One day, Dad called me and told me that Grandma had a falling accident. Immediately, I wanted to brush hearing this news off. She had fallen before and always made a swift recovery. However, he tells me this one's different. This time, Grandma fell and cut herself on a wooden fence post in the backyard of her home. Somehow, the cut infected her with some sort of infectious disease that usually can be treated and recovered from without hospitalization. Grandma's advanced age and weak immune system made this a bit more than of an issue. A day later, Dad called me again. He told me that he was on his way to pick me up to visit Grandma in the hospital's ICU. The disease had plagued and ravaged her body overnight. Her lungs were filling with infected fluid, and it was attacking her heart's valves. The last thing Dad told me on the phone was that this was possibly the last time I would see Grandma alive. Once we arrived at the hospital, we walked quickly into her room. Despite the appearance, or to my surprise, the room was completely packed with family members. Everyone made an appearance. Grandma at that time was sleeping, so for a while my dad and I talked about all the memories we had with Grandma just to occupy some time. At this point, I could see the sadness and grief in Dad's face. I knew at this point he knew Grandma was going to die. Dad is a heart doctor at Robinson Memorial Hospital and has dealt with countless heart conditions, diseases, and deaths. Dad has seen more people die than he's probably willing to tell me. He told me many stories, and it seemed to me that the usual tough shell of emotion was starting to crack and break. I had never seen anything like this before. It takes me all of my will to not cry along with him. Instead, I try to do my best to comfort him. Moments later, Grandma woke up. She slowly emerges from her slumber, and the family members all start taking turns with Grandma talking at her bedside. After Uncle Phil, I stepped up to the bed and put my hand on her shoulder. I say hello, and she instantly recognized me. Her now not-so-youthful face was stretching to that wide smile I always loved. She told me that she feels good, and we exchanged a few words after that. Soon she begins to fall in and out of sleep. The last time she wakes up, she calls to my dad. He sits at the bedside holding her hand for the first time since being admitted to the hospital. Grandma sits up under her own power. Staring at the ceiling, she's perhaps the happiest face I'd ever seen on anyone in my life. She talks to Dad, but loud enough for all of us to hear it. She's talking about how she can see heaven. Grandma describes beautiful golden roads, shining skies, and indescribably beautiful places. Then she tells us that she can see Grandpa calling to her to come and join. At this point, almost all of us began to cry. I didn't. I felt no need to. My mind was struggling to comprehend everything that she had just said, and it hits me like a brick wall. At that point, I realized that everything Grandma told me about God and staying close to the church was true. This experience was truly amazing. The rest of the family was speechless. We all knew that she was telling the truth. Grandma was completely at peace. In her last hours, she seemed to be the happiest I'd ever seen her. Now, almost 2 years later, after Grandma's passing, her house is still not the same. A cousin of mine purchased the house, and the atmosphere there has not been the same. I no longer get to walk in and hear her voice. I don't get the same warm welcome of cooking food, seeing her smile, and giving her a big hug. Grandma, sharing our memories together with the outside world has been an experience I hope that you would appreciate. The lessons you told me about life will be things that I carry with me for the rest of my life. I will never forget all the times I came to you with you to church. I promise to go to church all my life and learn its ways, following in your footsteps. Your house is just not the same without you. Recently, I decided to start playing football again. Though you never got to see me play any games, I know now that you were always there, even though I can't see you. I wish you were still here so we can make more memories with each other, but I know that you are happy and living an amazing next life with Grandpa. One day, I will be there with you, and I will get to see your smile once more.